Welcome to episode 2 of Live from the Bear Factory.
We did that. We had this idea to sync the audio. I was like, we need like one of those clicks things they use on. So I was like, I'll do this.
We need like a Dr. Pepper can opener.
Yeah. Oh, what did we do last time? We were like, dink.
Oh, yeah.
That was
We had
smart.
glasses. We only have one glass. Okay, so I have a song coming out tomorrow that it's kind of, the preview's been out for a couple weeks, but it's like officially hitting the airwaves tomorrow. It's called Calm Down. It's my next single. And you had a song recently come out.
Yeah. I finally released Hotep Rock, the song we were talking about a month ago.
Yeah, so was it officially released last time or was it close?
No, the Spotify release was like a week away. And then I didn't do any announcement of it until literally today was the first day I did it.
Right. So it kind of, in a way, in terms of your experience, came out today.
Yes, today's the first day that I told anyone.
Right. Now, Calm Down. When did you hear the first demo that I made? Was it 3 years ago?
Yeah, it was 2017 in front of Chris Coliades, I don't know how to say his name.
I don't either.
Chris K's house.
Right. And I wrote the lyrics for that song in 2012. So the reason I'm bringing all this up is the theme for today is resistance.
Muscles. Like when you work out with a bench press and it's too heavy.
Yeah. So it's weird. It's like, why is it so hard to create and release the shit we want?
Well, I was joking about the muscle thing. Resistance is from, that's the analogy. What's the author of that book? The War of
Stephen
Art?
Pressfield.
Yeah, that's the word he uses for, how would you describe it?
I feel like it's anything that stops you from being your, I guess, idealized self.
Right.
Like the person who you feel like you are, the person that, creates art, music, releases it. Like that person in your head who you feel like you are that you hope the rest of the world sees. But there's some force. There are things, it feels like there's something in your way. And sometimes it's external forces, sometimes it's often you,
Right.
So in the War of Art, he just calls anything that stops you resistance.
And so the War of Art, that's a play on the art of war, but it's inverted. So it's the war you go through to make art, the war you go through to bring, creative ideas into existence. So he says, I have not read the entire book. I've read the chapters you pointed out to me.
Did I introduce it to you?
Yes. And I read the introduction, and I've read like maybe the first 4 chapters, and then in addition to the ones you've given me, and I've skimmed through it a few times. Like if I'm having resistance, I look by topic. Like it'll say like, your job is resistance, and I go there and read that one. So yeah, the thing I took from the intro, resistance is whatever it is that's holding you back from being your best self or from creating what you really want to be creating, from doing what you actually want to be doing. And the thing that emotionally struck me was that we forget that a lot of time the villains of history are actually failed artists. And the most famous of all, he says, the greatest victim of resistance in human history is Adolf Hitler. And he says, you think resistance won't destroy you? He's like, it's not just a play on words that Hitler would rather invade Poland than stare at a blank canvas. Because he was an artist who went to the University of Vienna when he was like 18 to be an artist, and he submitted his work and they didn't like it. And so that was resistance, right? And so instead
Charles Manson.
Same thing?
He's like a failed folk artist.
Oh, right. Yeah. And the Beach Boys. He even worked with the Beach Boys. Yeah, I forget about that. They did one of his songs. Did
Really?
you know that?
No.
Yeah. One of their songs and one of the records he wrote. And it's really weird. It's like little girl, disappear completely, little girl. It's really weird. And Brian Jones covered it. But yeah,
Was this before the murders?
Yes, this is before the murders. Yeah. So
Hitler.
There's another example. Well, yeah. So it's like he gets one layer of resistance, Adolf Hitler, And instead of overcoming it and be like, well, I'll apply it to a different university or screw universities, I'll just do art on my own. He joins the military, and the rest is history. So it's
So why is it so hard? I mean, the book is what it is, but I kind of just want to just talk about it.
right.
Why is it so hard? How hard was Hotep?
It's extremely hard. And the thing is, the parts that were hardest to me psychologically had nothing to do with labor, like nothing to do with the physicality, like the actual labor of being in here with you and recording and setting up the mics and doing a take. I mean, that's exhausting mentally, but
But it didn't take that long.
no, and it's actually inspiring. Like that motivates you. But the thing that was hardest was from the time I wrote it. I showed you Hotep the same time you showed me Calm Down and the whole Grand Commander record,
Yep.
and that was 2017. It wasn't officially released till today. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's
So it's
like,
about what, 3 years, 2.5?
yeah, almost 3 years. 3 years
Yeah.
this summer. So it's like it's been done, recorded since 2017, since fall 2017. So it's no, fall 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, first of all, congratulations on making the announcement today,
yeah,
because that was the final step. Um, yeah, it's interesting that it's so hard. Like, what stops you?
right.
I'm interested in two things. Is one, what makes it so hard, and what stops you? And two, is what do you call on? How do you get over it? Those are the stories I'm most like. The how people get over resistance, I guess, is the thing I'm most interested in. So actually, let's just start there. Like as of today, you made the announcement. You kind of said to the whole world, "My song is out. Check
Right.
it out."
Right.
It's like what changed or what happened? Talk about it.
Okay. I could say what changed today is you and me talked last week and we scheduled today. And it's like, then so what helps you overcome resistance? There's probably infinite answers to that problem. But in this particular instance, what made me get over it was having you as like an accountability partner and saying, hey, Sam, I'm coming over on Monday and we're doing this. And you saying, okay. And so I had to be here. Well, I didn't have to. I could piss you off and not show up or flake, but it just created another layer of like, oh, I'm responsible to another person. So one way to get over resistance, you could say, is having accountability to a person you trust. Like I trust you and I trust your opinion and I trust you have my best interest in mind. You're not trying to do some kind of sadomasochistic thing. So it's like you're
Okay.
here and I'm accountable to you, So that helped me today. I was like, I have to be here with Sam and I have to do what I told him I would.
So you have your phone and you're about to post, and it's the time where you're doing the thing that you've ignored or chosen not to do for whatever amount of time. What goes through your head as you start to do it? Is it freeing? Is it tense? Is it anxiety? What is it?
It's like that Woody Allen quote, 90% of life is showing up. Starting writing that post in front of you was like, I immediately was like, now I'm thirsty. Now I need to use the restroom. Now I need a more of a ketone smoothie. Now I need more coffee. Like I had so many things I needed to do first. And I was like, I'm just going to keep writing while I make the coffee. And it's like, once I got the first paragraph, it was so simple. Like everything, and it was like everything just flowed out. And then I was handing it to you to edit, and I was like, that was easy. It's like, it was literally just getting started was like all the resistance there was.
Right. Yeah, a friend of mine that plays music, he always says he's learned to just get up and then open a session. Just open a session of a song he's working on. And if you can do that one thing, the odds of him making progress on his song just skyrocket.
Right.
Because it's so hard to sit down and fucking open a session.
It's just like working out. It's like putting on my clothes to go to the gym is the hardest part of working out. Like the hardest mental part is literally just changing my clothes. Once I'm in those gym clothes,
Yeah.
I'm going. And then I'm in the car. I'm on autopilot. I'm not even thinking when I'm driving. Then I'm at the gym doing it. And I'm like, I'm glad I'm here. And I actually end up usually wanting to stay too long.
Right.
I'm like, oh, now I want to do this. Now I want to do this. And it's like,
I mean, it's the same thing for me. Like, starting the day is hard. Getting up is hard. Getting going is hard. It's like once I eat, kind of go for a walk and get the blood moving, everything is easy. But
let me ask.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Well, I was going to ask, I was thinking about when I first met you, you didn't really consider yourself a singer,
Yeah.
you know? And like now I think you do, right? You like you're not like Frank Sinatra, but you consider yourself like you're a singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
So what was the obviously we all had resistance to create and do that thing, but what was your resistance that you cuz you know, I've been singing since I was little, but like in public I guess there was resistance, but what was the thing that was holding you back and how did you conquer that because I know it was a big jump to go from like I'm bass player Sam to like no, I'm singer fucking songwriter Sam.
Vocals is hard. I mean, it's still hard. It's like it's funny when you say that because like when I tell people, like I remember I was writing a bio on TikTok and I was like, I'm Sam from Grand Commander, player of bass, writer of songs. But I didn't say like singer of
Singer,
songs.
yeah.
I said writer of songs. So it's interesting because I still don't feel like I own it. Even though I've been a lot more comfortable telling people like, yeah, like I play bass and sing in Grand Commander. Um, it was it was like I had reached. I didn't have anything left to do. I exhausted all of the avenues that I could pursue that didn't involve me singing. I got so frustrated that I felt like I had nothing left to try except for the one thing that I always wanted to do. Because it's like I never really cared about singing myself. I always wanted to be in like a Led Zeppelin type of band where I was like the bass player and we had the drummer. And, because like
Right.
Zeppelin to me, the reason I think about them, I guess there's other bands like Rage Against the Machine or just certain bands that they have their classic lineup, The Who,
Right.
where you can't really imagine a different musician coming in and filling that role.
Like Chili Peppers without Flea.
Right.
Like what
Yeah.
is that?
So that's what I always wanted to be. I was like, well, I'll be the bass player. We'll find a guitarist. We'll find a singer. And I spent years and years and years trying to find that. So in my first band, the first band that put out a record was Little Brian, and we didn't have a singer, so we decided we would write horn arrangements to try to take the place, to try to make the songs interesting enough. Because we're like, if we add horn arrangements, it'll be fine. And then, and what's funny is the guitarist could have sang in that band, and he didn't, because in my head it was like we need like the singer, we need like our David Lee Roth,
Right.
our Chris Cornell. And then Magnetite was different. Singing wasn't even really a thought. It was just I had written these songs with a drummer, and I don't know. It's like there wasn't really a lot of thought behind Magnetite except that it was going to be different from Little Brian. And then it just didn't really go where I wanted it to go.
And these are all slightly different styled bands.
Yeah. So Little Brian was like instrumental, like progressive funk, rock, metal, through composed, lots of parts, really hard to play kind of thing. Magnetite it still had that, but we were either a trio or a quartet, and a lot of it was still really hard to play, but it was very improv based. So,
Right.
a lot of our shows, like we wouldn't start with a song, we'd start with a jam, and it would morph into a song, and there'd be different jumping off points where you play through a form, and then you jam here for a while, and then everybody looks at each other and communicates in a very like musician-y kind of thing.
Right.
And so with Magnetite, it's like we never even officially broke up. We kind of just stopped. And then suddenly 8 to 10 months had gone by and I hadn't called the drummer and his drums were in my house. And, it's like, well, I guess we're not a band anymore. But I still want to make music and I still had songs. But the thought of trying to go down the instrumental road, was just depressing. There's actually a Magnetite EP that I'd started that I never finished because it was just like I don't feel like I don't feel like myself.
Right.
That's what it gets down to.
Right.
Is this whole time it's like, how do I make music that I feel like it's Sam music?
Right.
That someone listens to it and it's like, what is Sam music? Like, what is the music I want to make?
Right.
Like I was making this kind of technical fusion funk stuff. And a lot of times I wasn't even enjoying myself on stage. And I'm like, this is gone, it's like I have technical facility on bass, and then I got into my head that I have to employ that at all times.
It reminds me of, have you heard like that Joe Satriani story? So it's like he was playing in like basically top 40s kind of like disco cover bands, like just trying to make it as a musician in LA. And then he finally was like, he had enough. He's like, I'm going to do my own music. So he put together like a little home recording setup and recorded almost all the instruments himself, except I think he had a drummer come in. and mic'd it all himself. He had no idea what he was doing. Then he mixed it himself. He mastered it himself, and then he like released it on some like indie label in LA, right? Like they would release it for him, and he forgot about it. And then one day he was getting like a Guitar Player magazine or something, and there was a whole article about him and like, who is Joe Satriani? And he was
Oh,
just like,
wow.
wow, but it's like, I felt like when I met you, there was like this very, Sam is a progressive musician who thinks like within the confines of like the avant-garde and stuff. And then it's like, I hear Calm Down, which is coming out tomorrow, or I Hope You Die in a Fire. And it's like, man, I didn't even know this part of him existed. You
Yeah.
know?
I
Like
mean,
sensitive singer-songwriter dude,
yeah.
you know?
Well, like it kind of was dormant for a while. Well, a lot of my favorite bands aren't technical.
Right.
Like AC/DC isn't technical. P Funk
It
isn't
is to me.
technical. Yeah.
But
I mean, it's like compared to like Dream Theater,
oh,
Pain
right,
of
right.
Salvation, or
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Return to Forever. Like to me, that shit's like super technical.
Mhm.
And I've always liked acoustic music. I've always liked bluegrass, and I've always listened to tons or like early Tom Waits. That's a good example of like non-technical singer-songwriter music.
Speaking of, I just listened to that first Tom Waits album for
Closing
the
Time?
first time. Yeah, and like the first track, I was like my audio engineer brain turned on. I was like, God, how far away was he from the mic when he was singing?
Right.
It looks like there's so much room in the mic. It's like this sound, the sound you're probably hearing right now. It's like there's just so much space between his mouth and the mic, and I was like, it's kind of cool. At first, I hated it, and then like I fell in love with it. I was like, wow, that's so smart.
He was
Like,
probably playing piano while he sang.
yeah, and like looking down at
Yeah.
his hands, so the sound's going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just great. But so okay, so you're a big fan of that. Sorry, I got
Okay.
deviated.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of stuff happened around the time I started trying to sing. Well, with the whole singing thing, I'll talk about that specifically. I just always thought I couldn't do it. Like I always tried. I would hear myself, on camera, on recordings, and always think it was terrible.
Right.
I remember with the band I was in high school, they were doing harmonies, and there were always these times in my life where I'd try to sing and it would somehow be embarrassing. Like we had a band practice in my house, and I remember I was saying something on the mic, and everybody kind of like stopped and looked at me like it sounded really bad, and they were like, "Yeah, you shouldn't be on the mic." Or like once we were drinking at some party, I was like a senior in high school, and they wanted to do some 5-part harmony, and I remember the drummer with like perfect pitch told everybody the notes to sing, and then so he gave everybody a note, and I was one of the 5 parts, and then we sang the note, and then someone's like, someone's off, and the drummer like points at me.
Right.
I mean, this goes back even further.
Wow.
Like I remember I tried out for choir in 4th grade, and there was chorus and there were chamber singers, and the chamber singers are like the good one.
Right.
And I remember telling my mom I was going to make chamber singers, and she like didn't know what to say because she was like sure I wasn't going to make it, but she
Right.
wasn't going to discourage me. And somehow I made chamber singers, and I didn't have a good audition, but I don't know. I think the teacher just liked me. But the specific memory I have is that I remember singing, and there were hearing people around me were on, and this is at 10 years old, and knowing that I was singing something different,
Right.
and not knowing how to find where I was. And the memory is that the teacher comes over, and there's like, I don't know, there's like 60 kids.
Right.
If one person's off, it's really hard to hear exactly who it is. But she comes over just to the area where I am, and she's like, someone over here is off. So I just have all these memories
That's
where,
so sad and funny.
yeah, and I knew it was me, and I was like, what do I do? So I took a voice for non-music majors class in college, and it was interesting because sometimes I could do it and sometimes I couldn't, So it was always one of those things where you hear people that are tone deaf that just absolutely can't sing,
Right.
and I realized I wasn't tone deaf. It was just hard for me. Like I had no technique.
It was like a coordination thing. You couldn't match pitch like you could hear the pitch in your head.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, see, that's not because some people cannot reproduce the pitch in their mind. You play it and they hear a different pitch in their head. It maps it wrong.
Right. Yeah. So that was the deal, is that I could hear the pitch, and then I would know if I was on or off, and then I could find it. And then sometimes I open my mouth and boom, I'd hit the pitch right away. And then other times it's like I have to search for it. And then I was in a blues band, I don't know, when I was in my early 20s, I guess, and I had to sing backups. And it was weird because at first I was terrible, and then suddenly I just got better at it. And, being on the mic in front of people, it's like something about being in front of people and doing something in front of an audience, you get better faster.
Right.
You know, it's like you can practice alone. If you practice with people, you get better faster. But if you do something in front of people, then it's some kind of weird, like, it supercharges you.
Right.
Which is why you got to put music out, because for some reason, as soon as you release music, it just changes everything.
Right.
But the point is,
Like,
is that,
my DNA is different today.
yeah,
It
exactly.
really is.
I just had this thing in my head that it's not that I couldn't do it, but that I couldn't do it well. You know, so that's what made it really hard. And so
Isn't it shitty in our culture? It's like there's a belief, like some cultures, it's assumed if you can speak, you can sing. Like singing is just like everybody sings. Like, what do you mean you're a good singer? Like everybody's a good singer. Like some cultures are like that. In the Western culture, there's such like a separation between like you're a singer, musician, or you're a lay person, right?
right,
And it's like, so if you don't instantly sound good, they're like, singing's not for you.
right,
You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
like, if you instantly just get lucky and you sounded good, they're like, singing is for you. You're a singer, you know? And it's like, and then it's like everybody splits paths. See, I'll talk about this just for a second. My mom is a singer, like a professional singer. And my brother is a opera singer, like a professional opera singer. But so I could always sing and match pitch and stuff. But in my house, it was always my brother is the singer. You're like the other guy who does other stuff, like plays sports. It's like, my dad's a piano player, you know, so it's like they would give my brother voice lessons. They would stand him in the living room on top of the fireplace and like have him sing with like his fingers in his mouth and like, don't let your jaws touch, you know, so that the sound can escape. And he's practicing singing like all these opera songs and things like that from the time he was a little kid. And it's like I could always match pitch. The earliest memory I have of song memory is like that Brahms lullaby. It's like da dee da da dee da da dee da da da. My mom would always sing that before I went to sleep, and it's like I could sing that anywhere. Like when I was a baby, I'd be like na ni na na ni na, you know. And it's like I think maybe that's part of it. Like having your mom like sing to you like in tune in time, like when you're a baby, like maybe something, and also maybe like through emulation, you're then no longer afraid to do it, you know. And it's like maybe it's like. Maybe some parents were told their whole life, you can't sing. So then they're around their kids and they start singing and they get nervous in front of their baby. Like, is my baby judging my shitty singing?
No, it's really interesting the
know?
thoughts that we have, you know, that can affect us for the rest of our lives. Like somebody could have said one thing at some time,
and that's resistance.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That voice shows up and is telling you when you're 30 years old, hey, you can't do this.
Yeah, exactly. So
fuck those motherfuckers.
Right, yeah. Okay, so after Magnetite, that band kind of collapsed. I had a falling out with the producer, and then I had a bad breakup, and that was kind of the beginning of Grand Commander. Oh, and I was mixing a band that I really hated how they sounded. So it was like I was doing all this shit for other people, like musically, and none of it, it was either falling apart or I wasn't enjoying it. And, you know, I think at this point, I was already 30. So it's like it just gets different when you get a little bit older because, you know, if you're like 25 and you're like, yeah, I do music, everybody's like, go for your dreams.
Right.
And it's like if you're 30 and you're like, oh, I play music, people are like, oh, that's cute. You know, do you make money?
Yeah, it's funny. I meet people at like parties and stuff, and like if they're like businessy people, they're like, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm a jazz musician. They're like, for a living.
Yeah.
Like, I've had that followed up a few times, and I'm like, that's what I do. Like, ass.
Yeah, God, I remember in high school when I was a senior and I had to talk to a guidance counselor, and she's like, what do you want to do for, you know, like you have good grades, like what are you going to do in college? I was like, I want to be a musician. And literally she was like, don't throw your life away, become a doctor.
Right, yeah.
I was like, okay.
It's funny, I have a friend who's a doctor, you know him, and he plays music as well. And he comes to my shows, he's like, don't ever quit music to be a doctor. You know, he literally says that.
I mean, that's the funny part is you meet all sorts of people that when they find out you play music, they're like, that's great. I wish I still played.
Right.
You know, I'm like, yeah, I wish I had money.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's weird too. It's like there's been several people. There was a guy from like Ireland or something, and he's a business guy, and he comes through town, and I was playing music. It was like a Tuesday night. He was the only person in the audience, and so I kept talking to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he came up to me like 6 months later. He was in town again, and he found the same bar on accident. He's like, "Hey, you're here," and I was like, "Yeah." And he started talking to me. He's like, "No, man." He's like, I started talking to my daughter again. I haven't talked to her in years. He's like, well, he's like, I realized when I saw you, he's like, her goal was to be like a violinist or something. And I told her that was bullshit and she should study business. And he's like, I felt like part of our whole relationship, how it deteriorated, was starting there. Like they haven't really spoken much the last like decade, you know? And he's like, I reconnected with her after seeing you. And he's like, because seeing you play, he was like, oh, maybe she could have had like a totally satisfactory life doing what this guy is doing,
Wow.
you know? And it's like, that's bizarre. You know,
Yeah.
like,
So it was like her innermost dream, and he shit on it.
yeah. And then she must, I mean, if I could pinpoint or if, you know, it's her fault for not doing it ultimately, but if you could externalize all of your resistance into one person, and it's your parent, which is easy to blame for all your
Right.
problems anyways, it's like I would totally take that way out. I would totally be like, it's my parents' fault I don't do music, not my fault, you know, and I would have a really strained relationship with them as a result. So it's
And then
like,
be slightly unhappy your whole life.
right, no, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or extremely unhappy, who knows, or
Right.
whatever.
Well, I was about to get into talking about singing more, but that brings me to the point where it just makes me think about I'm like really careful and really supportive every time people talk about any type of creative endeavor.
Right.
And
That's
I think a lot of people aren't. Like I think a lot of people don't know what to say when someone's trying to do something different. And I think a lot of people in the culture just don't value it
true. Right.
because it's like it's like the people that are successful and famous, it's like they came from somewhere. But most, I don't know what to call non-creatives, civilians, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like there's no in between. Either you're famous or you're a failure.
Right.
They don't see like the working musicians or the working artists or just the people on their way up before they hit some level of recognition or, money making ability, whatever it is that how you define success.
Yeah, I have a friend who works. He's not really a close friend, but we got into an argument on Facebook and it got personal. You know how those devolve sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And he works at like Dairy Queen.
Yeah.
He's like a manager at Dairy Queen. Like, no offense to, like, I've never talked shit about that. But he literally goes like, oh, good job being a professional musician. I've never heard your songs on the radio.
Oh,
And it's
yeah.
like, you know what I mean? It's like, okay. It's like, but I make more money than you doing what I want to do for a living, playing guitar, which he wants to do too. He's a musician as well. And it's like nothing against him or people who work at Dairy Queen, but it's like, look, there's a whole musician's middle class between like guy who plays in his garage, guy who busks on the street, and guy who plays at, Carnegie
American
Hall
Airlines
or
Center.
wherever. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's like there's a whole range in between all levels. There's people who make 100,000 a year. There's people who make 50,000 a year. There's people who make 20,000. There's people who make $1 million 1 year and no money for the next 10 years because they
Right.
wrote a song for a movie score or something. And it's like there's just a whole range of opportunities. It's like catching fish or something. It's like I don't. My point is there's no way to just quantify it and be like this is the only metric of success in music.
Right. And you hear so many stories of like weird hit songs or just strange ways that people become successful or known or even fulfilled, I think might be a better word, in a way you never thought of.
Right.
And especially with the way technology is changing and social media and the way videos can blow up and, it's like you can make a video, then suddenly, like you're in a movie or you're in a commercial or just something
Right.
where suddenly something you've created totally changes your life. And for that reason, it's like I'm very careful anytime I hear anybody I know is doing something creative. I'm always just like, yeah, go for it,
Right.
try it. And then when people come out with stuff, it's like I'm extra careful. I
Right.
think every once in a while, like if something like audio quality, the one time I feel like I say too much is if I'll like watch a friend's podcast or something and like I can't hear what they're saying. If like
Right.
the quality is bad or there's something that makes it obviously where it's like your message is being obscured to the point where I can't even, I can't watch your podcast or do something because it's like I can't hear. It's like in that case, I feel like I'll say something. But in terms of like, your creative output or your work itself, it's like unless somebody is specifically asking my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
all I'm going to do is just say, fucking go for it, keep going. Because one, it's like anytime you start, it's not like you're going to start and things are going to be amazing.
Right.
Sometimes, sure, there's always, edge cases, but no, you got to kind of go through the fire and deal with making stuff that isn't up to the level you want or the level that other people recognize, and you have to rinse and repeat and go and go and go and go. And I think a lot of people never make it past that. Was it Jordan Peterson who was saying a lot of people make it to the brink right where they would pop and they stop?
Yeah, he talks. What kind of curve is that? It's like an S curve. It's like this. He's like, so success is like, say like, well, I don't know how it is for these people when they're watching. So like, here's success, here's time, right? It's an S curve. It goes like this, right? And so, say you're down here, you have to work really hard just to get to neutral. And you're going to stay in this like middle position for a very long time with very subtle, slight slope on improvement. And then at some point, it just multiplies. It goes straight up, right? It's exponential. He's like, but what happens is when you're on this curve, you'll start to go down. And he's like, if you don't continue forward, he's like, you will get pushed so far down so rapidly, it'll seem like you can never get back up. And he's like, what a lot of people don't realize when on this medium curve, and it's like, it seems like nothing's getting better and you're working harder and harder and harder, nothing's getting better. They give up and they slide all the way back down. He's like, if they didn't know they were like one more push, like
Yeah,
one
on
more
the
drive
cusp.
from the exponential growth curve where they're just things get easier and easier and easier. And it's like, he relates that to that saying in the Bible, for those who have little, all will be taken away. For those who have much, more will be given. And it's like, what? That seems so counter. It's like, because he's talking about this growth curve. Once you get on this part of the slope, everything will get easier and easier. And like, you will have more success. Your one success will grow fruits and create more opportunities for success. And it's like, that's what's really hard for people to, I'm pushing really hard. It's like, keep going. Like, don't give up, man. Like, you have no idea how close you are.
Right. Yeah. So, when I hear demos or see sketches or anything, I reflect back on, I mean, damn, I started writing music when I was like 12 or 13. It's like been a long time. So yeah, the best thing you can do is if you run across somebody in that same situation is just support, don't look at somebody's art and try to tell them the ways they can make it better. I think that's like
Right.
the worst thing you can say to someone showing you a
Right.
song or something.
Unless they ask you,
Right.
like if you're like, I want your honest opinion. I need this kind of feedback right now to make it better. Like you're basically looking for like some kind of mentor teacher relationship. Like that's different.
Oh, and I'll say this. I learned this from just doing a lot of sessions. Just say whatever your opinion is, just say it's good, think about, and then say whatever your opinion is.
Right.
It's the weirdest thing. But if you just say that, just say it's good, think about trying this, it will completely change your relationship with that person for the rest of your life.
There's a trick like that I've never put into use. I wish I had. He says, instead of the word but, say and. Because there's a sensation in English where if you say something and then you follow it with a but, everything you said before is kind of bullshit and not true. And so then the person's waiting for your real opinion after the but. Everybody's like, but, like they're waiting on it. So if you say and, so it's like, say I disagreed with you. I'm like, hey, everything you said is true and also what I actually think.
Right.
Then it seems like, well, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. I'm adding on.
And what if you said the word though instead of but?
Even that would be better. It would be softer.
Because I say though. I take out
Right.
but, and I've added though, but I think and might be even better.
Because, not prepositionally, in terms of sentence structure, and still makes sense.
Right. And here's the way I look at it. The reason is
I've never done that, by the way. I'm
Right.
just throwing that out. I
yeah.
thought. But
Yeah. And how am I trying to put this? Think about yourself. That's the best way to do it, is imagine something in yourself and just hoping that whoever you are, someone else can see it. So when someone is showing you something they're making, what they are hoping is that the rest of the world will be able to see this part of themselves that they're trying to share.
right.
And if you were sharing that with somebody else, how would you want to be treated? And it's that simple.
Mm,
And it's hard because I think that guy that said something on Facebook, like, I've never heard your song on the radio.
right.
It's not surprising that he played guitar. Like, he probably wants to be a musician working. He probably has some kind of dream that didn't make it. So you run into a lot of haters. So it's really hard because sometimes you can find yourself when confronted with a piece of art and something you want to say. It's like, damn, am I being a hater?
Right.
Yeah, no, it's really hard. But that was all on a side. Just fucking support your friends that are trying to do different shit. And also, this is a particular pet peeve of mine, is I feel like, it's hard to change, kind of become someone else or become more the person that you want. And when you see your friends doing that, don't be the person that throws their past, back in their face.
Yeah, you're not really like that. I know what you're like.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you're not an artist. Like
Right.
no, you're not.
Or that's not who you really want to be. Like, yeah, it's like it's not up to us to determine another person's identity for them. You
Right.
know, it's and I guess identity is kind of sculpted through people's collective estimation of you over time. But I also feel bad for people who have like a specific intention and then it gets totally misconstrued. Like that happens a lot these days because context is always like whatever somebody says, they drop the context. And it's like, so if I was like, Hitler said da 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 da, and
It's
then
like Ketner loves Hitler.
well, or they drop the Hitler part. And they're like, Ketner said da da da. It's like,
Oh
well, in
yeah.
theory, I did say that, but I was saying it in quotations of what another person said. And then it's like, but once it becomes like, oh, he's this way, it's like that everybody will jump on that bandwagon sometimes. But that happens a lot with art in general. It's like you start something this way, right? You say for me, like I like just my relationship with you. I pictured Sam in one kind of thing. And when you sent me, well, I didn't hear it when you sent it. When you showed me, I hope you die in a fire and calm down. It was like this is very outside of like my preconceived notion of who Sam is, and it's like almost it's like there I could say in myself there was a feeling to be like, oh, but this isn't the stuff you're really interested in. The stuff you were really more interested in was other stuff you showed me. But I buried that in myself and I was like, what if this is Sam, who Sam really is? And since that moment, I told you then, by the way, I said these are the two best songs on the record. I told you then.
What, I hope you die in
That
a
was in
fire
the
and
car.
calm down.
Yeah, I told you that then, and I said these should be. And after you did, I hope you die in a fire. I told you right before you released I hope you die in a fire. I was like, this is going to be your most successful song.
Yeah.
I
It's
said
true.
by far it will be the most successful, and I kept saying you need to release this one. And then after that, I was like, you got to do Calm Down, which is coming out tomorrow. And it's like because it's like in terms of style, those two are related.
Right.
There's a internal link.
Well, I hope you're right about calm down. We'll see in the
Could be
coming
totally
months.
fucking wrong.
Yeah. No,
Everybody
you
hates
never
it.
know. No, I mean, I hope people like it too. We just have to see. No, I'm feeling super weird about it because I just submitted to a bunch of blogs, and the
I've been
way,
watching.
yeah, the way the blog thing works that I use is you pay basically for people to listen to your song. It's like $1 to $3 per blog, or what. You can do it for free, but if you do, they never listen to it. So if you pay, you get a response within 48 hours. So average for everybody that uses the service is like 10%, meaning if you send to 10 blogs, 9 are going to say no, and they give you feedback. So I think I'm batting around 16% right now, which is pretty high,
Right.
higher than my other ones. But that still means I've received, I think at this point, like 34 declines. And then
In one day.
starting last night, I think I probably
Okay.
have like 30 today,
So
4
in
last
less
night.
than 24 hours.
Yeah, so
34 people telling you no.
right. So, you open it up and they say why. It's like, oh, don't like the vocals, don't like the production. And this one actually, it's pretty soft. With the easy way, it was pretty hard. Like, oh, I don't like this, don't like the vibe, don't like the song,
Right.
don't like this. This one, a lot of people are like, oh, like, I don't know, what are people saying? Well, fuck, who cares what they're saying? But the point
The
is,
one I could sum it up. The ones I read was like, basically, it's kind of nice. It's kind of boring. Definitely not for us, but good job anyways.
Yeah.
And it's like, but also like a lot of those have been like EDM blogs. So
Yeah.
so
well,
they weren't looking
here's
for
something
that.
I can say that I feel like is interesting about. I remember with I Hope You Die in a Fire, I probably got accepted like 10 blogs and probably 90 or something said no. What was interesting is that if I made a table of all the different things people didn't like and all the things people did like, they essentially liked everything and disliked everything,
Right.
right? And that's the thing you got to keep in mind when you're putting out art or music or anything. If you're putting out creative shit, there are so many people that absolutely someone will dislike everything you do and someone
Right.
will like everything you do.
Yeah, and it's like it's always weirded me out when people will have, for example, like 20 views on something. And they'll be like, oh, people really like this one. I'm like, as opposed to what? The thing that got 17 views? It's like, how is 20 views a valid sample size to make these kind of like long-term career decisions? And I've also had people tell me like there'll be a song or something they're playing and I'll be like, hey, that particular song has this wrong in it musically, and but that's the one that people like. I'm like, what people?
Yeah.
And they're like, and I'll like narrow them down. I'll be like, what people told you that? And they'll be like, well, one guy at a show that I did 4 years ago came up and said he really liked it. I'm like, okay. I was like, but I'm telling you, like, there's something like, and these are people, of course, who are asking for my advice on something. And I'm like, I'm not just like walking up to them at a show and be like, hey, the bridge section of that makes no sense. But it's like the example I'm particularly thinking is a guy whose song I'm producing. And I was like, well, this part, maybe could be modified. He's like, but people love this the most. And it's like his people is one dude from 4 years ago. And it's like, who knows if that guy was high, if he was drunk? Who knows if the guy was even really paying attention, or there was just one part that stuck in his ear he liked,
Or he was completely not paying attention at all, and then suddenly he's like, "Oh, I got to say something. I like this part."
Right, like it could have just been like he's motivated just by the context. That's the last song you played, and he needs to tell you something positive. So that's the thing too. If you talk about resistance, it's like, one form of resistance could be people telling you nice things too frequently.
Right.
And so everything with resistance has like it's like flip side of the coin. It's like too many supporters could, like, I'll give you an example. There's a story about Frank Sinatra, and this is like Frank Sinatra, like the zenith of his career. Like he's like maybe 45 years old. He's like the Elvis of his generation, and he has a residency at this time in Vegas at like, I don't know, like the Plaza or whatever it is in Vegas, right? And so he gets in the car, he goes to his driver, he's like, hey, take me to the Plaza. And the driver's like, yes, sir. And so he gets to the Plaza, and the door guy's like, hey, nice to see you, Mr. Sinatra. I'll take your coat. So he takes his coat. Frank gets all the way up the staircase, and it says Liza Minnelli on his dressing room. He's like, why the fuck is Liza Minnelli in my dressing room? They're like, Frank, you don't have a residency at the Plaza. It's at the MGM Grand. And he's like, well, why did you guys let me get all the way here? They're like, because you're Frank Sinatra. We're not going to tell you no.
Right.
And it's like, so you can be surrounded by too many yes people. You can surround yourself with, and some people I've seen in my life, I always try to surround myself with people who tell me the worst. It's like, because I'm always telling myself the worst, and because that's my resistance. I want people to affirm all my self-hatred and be like, yeah, it is bad, and you're bad. And I'm going to be like, yes, you're right. I should stop.
Yeah.
Right?
See, I don't put it in terms of wanting to be around people who tell me the best or the worst. I just want people who accept who I feel like I am or could be.
Right, right.
It's that simple. Because it's like, I want them to be who they are.
Right.
And I want to be who I am around those people.
Right.
And that was the thing. It was like that night when I showed you that music, like, had you said the wrong shit,
Right.
like our relationship would be totally different.
Right. That's true too. Yeah, and it's possible. I had a friend. I can tell you one of my resistances on Hotep. I had a close friend whose music I personally like, but no matter how good what you do is, he's always going to tell you it's bad, because he does that to himself, and he does it to everyone else around him. You could literally show him like Michael Jackson's performance at the Super Bowl, and he would laugh the whole time and say how stupid it is. And it's like, clearly that's like one of the greatest performances of all time, and it's like legendary, like top 10 greatest live performances ever. And he would just be making fun of it the whole time just because that's how he's wired. And it's like, I realize now going forward, if there's something I want like support on, or I want like an honest opinion of, I will never show him again. And it makes me not want to hang out with that dude very
Right.
often,
And then something I've been thinking about is, I feel like I was addressing what to say to someone who shows you art or some form of expression.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, what would I say to the person who is thinking about doing it? Not the person who, whatever. If you have something that you want to do, that you want to create, I think you should do it and try it.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not hurting anybody, if it's within, kind of the sphere of things you can do, and you're just stopping yourself, or you're convincing yourself you can't, I think it's important to try. Because to talk about, how do you feel now after making the post, after fucking fighting through whatever you fought through to get the song mastered and released, and you finally just said, hey, world, here's my song.
Right.
It's like, does it feel like a weight has been lifted?
Yeah, it feels like, I had a conversation with a friend the other day. It feels like, great, now I need to finish that work, and I need to be willing to accept that if it even if it went badly, I should do more work. But if it goes really well, all that is a prod that says do more. Like I watched this. I was not a big fan of Taylor Swift till I watched this Netflix documentary, and her last album did not do well. And
What is not doing well for Taylor Swift? Is it still like millions?
yeah, I mean it's still millions, but
Yeah.
like the reviews are all bad. She doesn't get on the TV shows and talk shows she wants to. They rejected it. The Grammy committee rejected it for a nomination this
Right.
year.
So it's like much less than everything she was
Right.
used to.
And so what she says though, so her like manager comes and she's like they're rejecting it at the Grammys. They don't want to like even like bring it to like the floor committee whatever to debate whether or not it'll get nominated. And she was like that's fine. And then she's like that just means I need to make another record. And it was
Yeah.
like I was like damn what a badass.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I
rinse and
mean? Like
repeat.
yeah, like fine. Okay.
For me, if I don't make songs and don't work on music, I just have this weird gnawing feeling that I'm not doing what I should be doing. And then I get in this weird bad mood and it kind of just infects my mood and everybody around me. So getting back to what you were saying about like singing and the stuff I'm doing now, I had exhausted every path with all the bands and everything fell apart and I was depressed for a couple months and I was like, fuck this, I need to write more songs. So I was thinking about life and dying, mortality. And I wrote this. I was having weird problems with drums because, I had a problem with the drummer that I've been playing with. So I was against drums. So I wrote this song called Clock is Ticking, which will be the first song on the album that hasn't come out yet. And I got a bunch of clock samples and I cut them up and made all these weird clock sounds. And I put some vocals on it. And I mean, it's very simple. It's just me saying, you cannot stop the clock ticking. And God, I remember I was so scared to do it that I had the mic really close to my mouth and I was being really quiet and I didn't want anybody to hear. I didn't want my roommate to hear because I didn't want any comments and I was just freaked out about it. And I was working with the band I mixed that weekend and I'd written that and the beginning synth part of Bad Bad Rabbit with no vocals. And I told my friend, like, hey man, I started a couple songs. I put some vocals on one of them. I'm going to send them to you. Let me know what you think. And he was just like, that's awesome. He went and listened, came back. He's like, that's awesome. You should keep doing that. And it was like just the small amount of encouragement I needed to keep going. And that was probably 3 years ago. I don't know. The vocal thing was really hard. It's still really hard.
My thing is so different. It's like I'm known to give people brutally honest opinions.
Yeah.
And it's like, but some people tell me when I give them a compliment, they appreciate it more. It's like, because if I hadn't liked the Grand Commander record, I would have told you.
Right.
I literally would have been like, I don't like it, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And it's like, so I'm glad I gave you the word of encouragement, but it was like, I wasn't bullshitting. You know what I mean? It was like, that was earned. And
Right.
I was like, and I was impressed with your singing. I was like, damn, I was like, you can actually sing. And you were like, oh, yeah, yeah. And I was like, no,
Yeah.
it's fine. I was like, to me, it's like singing is like push-ups. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I'm still like that. It's like, oh man. Yeah, like when people tell me they like my vocals, I'm always like, really?
Right.
Like, are you serious? And it's happened a lot. Like, it's always weird if I get a comment on Instagram or something where people are like, oh, I like the vocals. I'm always just like, okay.
I just like that. I like when people don't have like, there's like kind of like either you have like an opera voice or you have like this like thing, right? And it's like both of those things to me are like covers for how you actually sound. Like you're putting on like this veil of like sophistry to like hide like sincerity. And it's like what I heard in your voice, I was like, oh, that's how he is. You know what I mean? I was
Right,
like,
because that was all I could do.
It's a sincere expression of his personality through, tone, pitch, and volume, through singing.
Yeah. Well, it's like that's what keeps me going is that when I think about my favorite singers, I mean, some of them like are really great, like technical singers.
Right.
But all of them have some stamp of individuality that sounds just like them. And the ones that have it that aren't great technical singers, I still like them. It doesn't.
Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah, or
I
like
like his voice.
I love Jimi Hendrix's voice. Dave Mustaine is a lot of people hate Dave Mustaine, and especially if you listen to his early records, like he didn't have much going on melodically, but like I love Dave Mustaine. I love the Megadeth songs. I love the shit he came up with. Or that one I showed you. There's a song, City Slang.
Oh, I love that too.
Yeah,
that song
Sonic's
is cool.
Rendezvous Band.
Yeah.
It was MC5 broke up, and then Sonic Smith, did his, and that band only released 2 songs, and City Slang was the one he sang on. He's not a great singer. He's not what you would. It's hard. I need different vocabulary to explain it because if I say he's not great, he's not. You know what I mean? It's like good and bad almost the wrong
He's not
way.
Freddie Mercury.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
how do I say it? It's like he sounds like him. It's like the only person in the world that could ever do that was Sonic Smith.
Right.
You know, and it's like when I listen to it, I feel like I'm hearing the thoughts and words and feelings of this individual that had something to say.
Right.
You know, it's like if someone is expressing what their feelings are authentically, it's like I'm drawn to it. Now, even if I don't like the style, it's like a lot that feeling will supersede style, will supersede all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
Nothing else matters because you know you'll meet people like, oh, I don't like jazz, but I love this one song. It's like, why?
Right.
If you didn't like jazz, why do you like that one song? You shouldn't like any of them.
Right.
No, it's because
Right.
there's something greater. You know, something that crosses, you know, all these boundaries. So that's the thing that kind of keeps me going. Is I'm like, you know, I don't know what my limit is technically. I know that doing anything technical with vocals has always been hard. Nothing with singing has come easy. I'm still not happy with how I sing. You know, I wish I could record faster. I wish I could record better. Everything. It's like I could nitpick my vocals all day, and I typically do. But
Isn't it weird how people's blind spots are so different? Like you have people come in who kill it on vocals, and then like they pick up a guitar, and like it's just like you see their face changes.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, your resistance on the instrument,
Right.
You know, it's like people have different points of resistance.
oh my God, if you told me you wanted me to record bass on a song, I'd be like, okay, send it over.
Right.
You know? Or it's like this. If I was, say we were in a studio setting with like, there were 10 people, and you're like, hey, I need some bass on this. I'd say, okay, give me bass. Let's go right now.
Right.
But if we're in that same room and there were, you know, multiple people around, I wasn't alone, and you're like, hey, will you put a background on this? I'd be like,
You know what's funny? I consider myself more a guitarist than a singer. But if somebody said, hey, sing on this, I'd be like, okay.
Yeah.
And if it sounded bad, I'd be like, whatever. I didn't sound good today. You know, I'll try again later. And it wouldn't bother me. But if
Right.
somebody said you have to play guitar, I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know how.
Right.
Like-
You know what's funny is that I wonder if that's I give less of a shit about playing guitar on a record than bass. And I
Right.
feel like it's because I identify still as a bass player. So if
Right.
someone asks me to play bass, like I'll do it, but I'm still just like, oh, I better be good because I'm a
Right.
good bass player, right?
Mm.
But if someone asks me to play guitar, I give even less of a shit because I'm like, I'm not a guitar player.
Right.
I can play guitar, but I'm not a guitar player. So sure, I'll play. Why not?
Right.
Singing is just its own bag of fucking crazy shit that I always have. You know, I've been getting better over the years. I'll say that.
Right.
It's getting a lot better. And I'm moving forward. I'm releasing my songs. So at the end of the day, fuck it. I'm just learning how to say fuck it. And it's been really hard and it's still hard, but it's slowly getting easier.
Yeah. My thing with singing is that it's so inconsistent across even like times in an hour. Like my level of hydration, my level of tension in my body, my emotional state. It's like
Right.
I heard
Amount of sleep.
Yeah, like Mark Baxter said, like your voice is the only instrument you take with you everywhere, and that's totally exposed to everything. So it's like imagine taking a guitar and like dragging it through the snow, and then putting it in a really hot oven, and then putting it in a really dry room, and then taking it here, and then beating on it, and
Right.
then
And then if you play it and it
smoking
sounds
inside
bad,
of it. You know, like
you don't say that's a bad guitar.
right. You're like I've mistreated my instrument.
Right.
And it's like because your voice is wired immediately to all your emotional centers in your brain because the voice was designed to transmit our emotional state to people around us. That's why it evolved or whatever, so people could get how you felt. And it's like, so whatever. I had another person, he's a friend, Johnny Arco, told me this. He's like, whatever you're thinking on stage, everybody sees it and hears it and knows exactly what you're saying. And I was like, what? And I was like, that changed my whole perspective. Because if I'm thinking like, I suck, I'm terrible, I'm nervous, oh my God, these lights are too bright. Everybody is hearing,
Yeah.
literally, as soon as you open your mouth, he sucks, he's nervous, the lights are too bright, he feels uncomfortable, he's awkward. And it's like, that's why I like the idea of like, pick one word for every song. Like whatever the song means to you, reduce it to one word and just start saying that word to yourself over and over right before you sing. You know? And it's like,
I haven't heard that. I'm going to try that.
yeah. Oh, that helps a lot. That's a Nile Rodgers trick called DHM, Deeper Hidden Meaning.
Uh-huh.
Just reduce whatever you're doing to one word and then repeat that to yourself over and over. It helps, like the tune Gravity by John Mayer, I sing a lot. I like that tune. I can constantly change the one word that I'm saying because gravity is resistance. The literally, like, and by the way, indirectly, John Mayer is the one who tweeted about this book, and then Joe Rogan saw the tweet and then recommended
Oh, wow.
it.
Because I saw it from Joe Rogan.
Yeah, exactly. Joe Rogan heard about it from John Mayer, and it's like his tune "Gravity" is really just another word for resistance. It must be resistance, you know.
Yeah.
But it's like that tune. It's like I had a friend recently pass away in a motorcycle accident, so I just say his name before I play that song because it's like literally that guy was a guy who had a lot of problems in his life and struggled against resistance. But then it's like gravity's literally what pulled him off his motorcycle, you know. So it's like it has like all these like
Mm.
deeper meanings, and it's like that's helped me get through that. Like it's not helped me get through. It helps me convey the kind of like intensity I want to, you know. There's other like a tune, "Fine and Mellow" by Billie Holiday. It's a blues tune you've played with me a couple times. The whole song to me is about forgiveness. You know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
it's like it's about this guy cheating on her and he's really mean to her, but she still keeps taking him back. You know? And so for me, every time I start that song, I say the word forgiveness, you know, like just forgive. And it's like that, if you're thinking that, like really intently, like not, even me just talking about this puts us in a different emotional space. It's like I'm not
Right.
thinking about is my breath deep enough? Do I have enough tension? Am I sitting up straight? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like I'm thinking about like what does it mean to forgive somebody and how can I convey that? And it's like then when I start singing, it's like it's funny. Sometimes if I do it right, like people will immediately from the first note start crying. You know, and it's like because I'm thinking that thought and my voice is transmitting that emotional state. And probably if I listen back to the recording, because pitchy.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
No. Exactly. That's funny how that works. Um, yeah. So what's cool about this podcast right now was met with tons of resistance. We've been trying to get this shit started for
All
what, like,
day.
yeah, one all day, and before, I mean, this is the second episode.
Yeah,
Before the
kind of a
first one,
rough
it was
day.
like a
Yeah.
year. Yeah, but it feels good. I feel like I'm in the right state of mind to talk about this stuff because I don't have anything pressing immediately where I'm like, oh, I haven't done this.
Right.
Like my song's
Tomorrow's
coming out
release. Yeah,
tomorrow.
yeah.
You put up your post today. It's like for the time being, we both conquer resistance. So,
I kind of feel like I'm in like it's hot in here, so it's like a dry sauna.
yep, yep. I know it's getting
I
hot.
closed the door on accident. Well, I'll tell you one more story. Like last week I was supposed to make this post. I'm at the store in the middle of the night and I'm gonna drive over to my sister's house and get on the computer and drink coffee. I bought new coffee and ketogenic supplement to get my brain going, and I'm gonna do this post and like be done with it. And I'm turning left to go, and my car catches on fire.
Oh yeah,
Just like
actual
and
resistance.
I was like, whoa. So I could get out and I'm like beating the flames out. My battery connector touched the positive and caught on fire. So the next day, I'm going up a hill. I'm going to go get something to eat and come back and work on this. The fire had melted. I didn't realize the latch that holds my car hood down. I'm getting on the highway. My hood disconnects from my car and flies off. I was just like, holy shit. You know, and it's like,
Yeah.
so that book talks about it, but it's like resistance can also just be physics, man. Like the universe itself, it's like, hey, you're trying to do something. It's like not. It just puts. It's just like it's like if somebody's spotting you and they realize it's not enough weight, and they push back down a little bit on you to make it a little harder. It's like the universe is like, you really want this?
Right.
Well, let's see. You know, and it's like you have to push back. You know,
Yeah. Well, you did. You pushed back. So
you did too. I mean, honestly, I've been modeling the last year after you. It's like watching like Sam. He wasn't a singer. Now he's a fucking singer. Now he's like a million people or a million streams in almost of people knowing that he's a singer. Like that's a lot of people who say, "Hey, this guy's a singer and I like it."
yeah, it's crazy getting comments of people being like, "Oh, I like your voice."
Right.
I'm like, "Wow!" Like you don't know me at all, and like the one thing you're like, "Oh, I like your voice,"
Right.
and I'm over here like, "Oh, I feel weird about singing."
Right. And they're like, "That's the part that's best."
Yeah. And it brings a lot of things into focus too, because I mean, damn, with Grand Commander, it's like when I started, I was like, well, I'll get like a double neck and I'll do this thing with the Super Nintendo and the synthesizer, and it's all this stuff. It's very similar to how I felt with Little Brian, where I was like, oh, well, we'll get a horn section, we'll get a keyboard, we'll get percussion.
Right.
It's like, we'll get all this stuff, we'll dress it up to like do shit people will like,
Right.
And then it's like the song I put out, like Animal Attack and a bunch of songs I have like 200, 300 tracks.
Right.
Like, I Hope You're Not on Fire had like, I mean, a couple acoustics and some vocals, like, a couple drums, bass, but like you could see most of the tracks on the screen.
Right.
Like if you look at the other songs, I've done songs before. I have to have one session that fills up with so many tracks that I bounce it down. I bring it into a new section and then fill that one up with tracks
Right.
because like the computer can't hang with how many tracks I'm trying to have.
Right.
So yeah, it really brings a lot of stuff into focus where it's like, what do you really need? Like it's like all you need is what can transmit the feeling of what you're trying to say. And
Right.
it's been like a long road for me to try to understand that. And I constantly will go back to my old ways of being like, I need to do all this. And then,
The easy way is a
right.
great example of that. He tells me, I got a vocoder, I wrote a song,
Uh huh.
I'm gonna just do it and release it. It's gonna be great. So I come over to like just kind of hang out, and it's like that was a long day, and I was just hanging out, and you went through many more of those.
Oh my God. That's what's so ironic about the easy way is there was nothing easy about it. Like in my head, the easy way was going to be a simple funk song with like, you know, a couple vocoder parts, a couple like a bass part, a drum part, and just be a simple funk groove song. And like it turned into this like weird nightmare of
Hmm.
mixing and production and all this shit. And I guess Calm Down is kind of a nightmare of mixing too. But I think every song I've done has been a nightmare of mixing. So
It's there. We worked on this Jewish project, and there was a song called La Hachila Ariber, and it means the first time go over. And what it means is if in life you come to an obstacle, right? Well, you could try to dig a hole through the obstacle. You could try to like punch a hole. You could try to walk around the obstacle. You could try to dig a hole under the obstacle. But La Hachila Riber means the first time go over the obstacle. And so what that means as a Hasidic, principle is that if there's resistance in your life, overcome the obstacle the first try. Like, and it doesn't mean you do perfect the first try. It means no, put your best foot forward from the beginning. Don't try the easy way. Don't try to back out. Don't try to like go a different direction. Like literally attack the obstacle face on. And then what I realized too, to go over an obstacle sometimes is the path of most resistance because now you're fighting gravity. That's
right.
the hardest thing to do is to go up against the elements. And it's like the principle there is do it the way that you best intend originally. Start there with if your ideal is this, and like your ideals can be based on like your emotions. Like, well, if I only had a Fairchild and a Telefunken 251, I could record music. It's like no, that's ridiculous. Like your best ideal that like within the confines of reason, that's your ideal. Do it now. Like continue, move forward in that direction. Like no alternative. And it's like how many times have we had to learn that lesson?
Over and over and over,
Like there was a Melodyne situation, remember? And it was
which is
like
auto tune.
it was just auto tune. But the so we're fixing some vocals, and there's multiple ways to do it. You can go like section by section by section and make sure each one is right and all this stuff, or you can just do it like the easy way. And we went through this whole process, and I took a nap, and I woke up, and you're like La Hachila Riber, and you're like starting the whole thing over, like 8 hours. Like no, we're starting over. We did it all wrong.
But it sounded better.
It sounded infinitely better. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like where would we have been if we had just done it the first time?
Right.
But I think it's part of the song too. Is like you have to realize you have to go through, you know, you have to go through instead of going over enough times to realize like you might as well just go over to begin with.
Right. And do what's right. And that principle could extend to any direction, but it's like instead of waiting to do the right thing, just do it at the beginning.
Yeah, and I guess like in the context that we're talking about, like the right thing is just those creative things that you always want to do. Just get it done.
Start. Just
Yeah.
start. Start writing that post. Start recording. Make the phone call to get it like whatever needs to happen. It's like I know if like sometimes if in order to start a long process of events, I just have to like text one word to somebody, it will take me hours to text that word. And it's like, why? Like
Yeah.
it's so stupid, but
But once you get through it, there's nothing like the feeling of relief when you get through it. You know, the existential dread comes back, and then it's time to start another song. Like, I joke all the time, like, I feel like a vocal session has started when I question my entire existence
right.
and everything I'm doing. And I'm like, okay,
That's the beginning.
I'm in it now.
Right.
Yeah, but without it, it's like, God damn it, how would I feel if I hadn't been trying all this shit?
You've actually turned some sessions around because a lot of times I would have thrown in the towel on a session because there's been so much resistance. And then like we'll take a long break and then you'll go up to the person and be like, hey, I always tell myself this. Like when I get to this point where I'm like seeing like an existential crisis and like I'm at the end of myself and on the verge of a nervous breakdown, the session just started.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of people, their technique is like, hey, let's come back on a different day.
Right.
And it's like a lot of times that day never materializes.
Yeah, it's like you're here now.
That person got beaten by resistance and you're sending them home beaten, like mentally and physically and spiritually beaten. And they remember that pain, that trauma, and they don't want to come back.
Right.
There's been so many times here where you've turned it around for me. I've been like, let's go, I'm done. And you're like, the other day when we were doing a video, we had done a whole video. I didn't like it. Then we came in and did it again. They were all bad. They were bad. They were bad. They were bad. And finally, I was like, man, it's just not gonna work. It's not gonna go well. And you're like, what if you did this? You're like, just grab a guitar. I'm gonna grab a guitar. I'm gonna play. You grab this mic. You're like, hold it in your head and sing. You're like, ready, go. And like, it was great.
Yeah, yeah, we
And
did
I
it.
was like, awesome. I was like, and then I went home so happy.
Right.
Like everything changed. And it's like, but if you hadn't like spotted the win, you know what I mean? Right when it was time, like the kill shot. It's
Mhm.
like, you know, you wait all day. It's like hunting, like that. That
It is
example
like
in the
hunting.
War of Art, man. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Is like and to take that example, it's like if you say I'm gonna go out and catch a rabbit, like that might not be right because what if you go out and catch and kill a different animal?
Right.
You know, and that's what's weird is like with writing a song or doing some kind of endeavor, it's like you don't know, you can't plan it too hard and go for exactly what you were planning. You just have to start, and like the resistance is almost a direction. You know, like you have to keep going, but it's like listen to the signs. Like sometimes shit isn't gonna work. It doesn't mean you should stop. It just means try something else.
Right.
And it was like that was the whole thing. Like we weren't supposed to be doing what we were trying. We were supposed to be making the video and figuring out how to do it.
Right.
So the resistance was like, yeah, this is wrong. Go do
Right.
something else.
Right.
Yeah, you know, it's hard to find the balance because sometimes it's like, yeah, you're not gonna fucking get it today. Sometimes
Right.
this is the wrong day, but sometimes it isn't. You know.
Well, there's physical limitations too. It's like if you have a cold or a sore throat, you're just not gonna do it. You know? And it's like you're not gonna put a round square and whatever.
Yeah, like I worked with
round
the
peg
drummer
square.
that had a leg injury, and he's like, I don't know the word can't, and we were recording. He's like, the word can't is not in my vocabulary. And he's like, but I can't do it today. So yeah, it's hard. But
The one guy had the broken wrist.
uh-huh,
He still played drums. Was the same guy?
same person.
Oh my god, that guy
Um,
worked at a factory all day with a broken wrist. He's like, let's do drums.
so because I don't want to be one of those like, you know, the voice in your head where you're like, never quit, never quit, never quit. It's like sometimes you're not going to do it.
Sometimes quit.
Yeah. I guess the point is like you're often closer than you realize. Just like with that S curve with the Jordan Peterson thing, it's like not only in terms of your career are you close to where you want to be, oftentimes your kind of creative output, you're just on the brink of that thing. And if you can just take that uncertainty and realize that it's kind of like a compass pointing you in a specific direction, if you keep going that much longer, there's oftentimes you will find what you're looking for.
It's like the other day, I have a friend. She has a podcast. She might come on here sometime. I'm gonna go on her podcast in like 2 weeks. It's called Big Girl Pants, and she's like, so I was explaining this concept to her, resistance, and she's like, I was like, so what's your resistance? Because she has a podcast, which I thought like her resistance was starting the podcast, and now she started it. She's like living her best life. She's like, no, she's like, I really just want to be a stand-up comedian. And it's like the podcast to her is like a step towards stand-up comedy, getting used to talking, getting used to being in front of people. And I was like, oh, and I was like, but that can be its own resistance. She's like, yeah, like the preparation for the event itself can be resistance.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like that's us buying tools. Like, oh, if it just had more tools.
Right. Yeah. No, we
You
need
know?
this one. We can't do this out of this mic.
Right.
I mean, I'm the worst at gear. Oh, I need this fucking piece of gear.
I might be a little worse.
I don't
You're
know.
worse at buying. You actually go
Yeah.
through it. I'm worse at dreaming. Like my dreams are like, but yours are like, I have this dream. I did it.
Yeah. And then my credit card bills go crazy and I'm stressed out.
Yeah, but you know what's fun? Like we both mutually benefit from our mutual obsession with gear. So it's like, oh, he's like hates himself for buying that, but I don't. I'm glad
Right,
it's
yeah.
here.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I'll benefit the most when all this shit turns a profit, which is kind of the goal. And also something Pressfield talks about in his book. How people are like, oh, like if you do it for money, you don't love it. Like I see that shit all the time. Like, oh, if you're in this for money, you know, it means you don't love it. Like the real musician just does it for the passion. And Pressfield's argument is like, nah, if you're in it for money, like you're throwing down. Like that means you're serious. You're in it to win it. Like you're
Right.
passionate and you're saying, yeah, I want to make some money. Like let's do this.
Right.
So that's the point I'm at. That's the topic for a whole different podcast. But
I will just say that's never been a point of resistance to me because I've just always people who say something like that. I'm like, well, what did you? My whole thing is, what's your day gig?
right.
And it's usually something they hate.
Yeah.
Like that they have no interest in, and it's those are always the people saying like, oh yeah, but you know you got to do it for the love, man. You can't charge money for your passion. And it's like, and what do you do?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I sew buttons onto used military uniforms for retired dogs.
But yeah, and that's the whole thing. Don't let anybody tell you what you should do. If you want to do music to make money, then do music to make money. You know, do it as long as you're not hurting somebody. It's like do what you love and do what you want.
Yeah, that's the main takeaway. Is be yourself. And what was the we talked about? Find people that encourage you. You know, and don't suck. I mean, yeah, you could suck. Get better.
The thing is,
you
I
know?
think you have to suck. I think
Right.
you have to deal with not being as good as you want. I think sucking is part of the process.
Oh, I meant sucking. Like, don't be lazy.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
when I say, like, I look at myself in the mirror every morning since I've been trying to work on my health, and I say, don't be a piece of shit. That's my morning mantra. You just have to look in the mirror and say, I will not be a piece of shit. I had a friend who used to work out with me, and he had like a beer gut because he drank a lot. And his gut was the weirdest thing. It was shaped like a square. And it was so funny. For like years, I would see him working out with his shirt off, and I always thought his gut looked like a giant square. And I'm shit you not, he's doing squats with me one day, and he literally says this. He says, I will not be a square. I will not be a square. And the thing is, I always wanted to tell him that. And it's like, clearly he knew.
I
I
think
love
that's
you, Javi.
I think that's a good place to stop it.
All right.
Fuck people who are against you, and keep doing your own thing. That's what I say.
I will not be a square.
Yeah, I will not be a square either. We will not be squares. You don't be a square. All right, there's episode 2.
Bye.